Welcome to the Ava Community Energies Community Advisory meeting. And we are here in 1999 Harrison Street, Suite 2300, Oakland, California. It is now 6:08, beginning our meeting. And welcome to everybody here and online. And first of all, we'd like to, also, if you have any kind of question or you would like to speak, you can use the hand function on Zoom or *9 if you're joining through telephone. Okay, Adrian, can you please take the roll?
Thank you. Member Landry,
Present.
Member Weiner,
Present.
Member Stevenson, Member Swaminathan, Member Lockman,
Yeah, I'm here.
Member Pacheco, Member Harper.
Present.
Thank you. Member Lewis,
Here.
Member Hernandez,
Present.
Vice Chair Balkasoon, Chair Souza.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to move on now to public comment. Public comment is reserved for members of the public wishing to give a comment on non-agenda items. And you'll have 3 minutes for your comment. Are there any members who wish to make a public comment?
Okay. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, Jessica Tovar with People's Clean Power Alliance and Local Clean Energy Alliance. I wanted to address two things that are not on today's agenda, but are for the board. The first one is the procurement policy around contractors that work with ICE. The staff is proposing to pass a resolution to the board or a resolution to the board to prevent contractors who work with ICE from being contracted with the agency, which is good. Unfortunately, that does come with an expiration date. And I'm sorry, but this administration and the ICE terror that is being deployed in our communities is not going to end on December 31st, 2028. So definitely that needs to be a permanent policy. The second thing is I noticed under the consent item, there is an item to overhaul the Community Advisory Committee, which certainly is problematic because the whole point of staggering terms is to prevent several people from departing at the same time. And then also it just seems to me like there should be more notice. And I'm noting also that the fiscal budget will be voted on pretty soon. And so there's some major issues coming up that the community who's been with the agency historically should be able to weigh in on. And I just can't imagine a whole new body coming in and understanding a lot of the complexities of what is brought up by this agency, but also to be able to weigh in meaningfully and best represent the community. So I wanted to name that. I also wanted to say that I really appreciate all the folks that are in the room and online. I see you, Davis. I don't know who else is online because I only see Davis's name, but I just want to show my appreciation. The agency actually used to have receptions for departing board members and community advisory committee people. And so while I don't see that happening here tonight, I will say that I appreciate y'all. Clean power to the people. Thank you very much. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica. Are there any other further public comments? Online? No.
There are no hands raised at this time.
I'd like to take some comments from in the room. Cynthia Landry?
Yes, regarding what I just heard in public comment,
Um, I don't know if is there any way to add any, agenda items, or does that, we need to give notice, right? If we add anything, I'd like to, regarding the, 2028, I don't think there should be a deadline in, no ice, contractors in Ava Community Energy. I just think that, that should be our, general practice without a sunset date. So I don't know if, that can be added, or what the process would be. And secondly, if I heard the public comment correctly, is there a reconfiguration of the CAC? And if so, that certainly, that affects this body, and that certainly should be agendized, also, Madam Chair, if we're able to do that.
In order to add an item to the agenda, after the agenda has been posted, it would need to be judged as an emergency situation that requires immediate action that arose after posting. And it would require a 2/3 vote of the body. So the first question would be, the need for immediate action that arose after posting.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Clarify something? I just want to clarify the item going before the board on Wednesday for CAC appointments. There's no reconfiguration or overhaul type item, anything to do with the structure of the CAC. This is kind of a standard item to allow the board to consider and approve appointments to the CAC. We have several vacancies right now, several folks who are not seeking another term when terms end at the end of April. So this is an item for the board to consider making those official appointments.
So what you're saying, this is just what we've always done, and there's nothing, there's no change. Is that?
This is an item purely just to make appointments
Okay.
to the committee.
Okay, well, with
So-
that said,
The question would be, does this need to be heard at this meeting in particular, or can the question wait until the next CAC meeting?
Well, I think the item that the CAC appointments, that seems to be fine unless there's something that I'm missing here. But I do think what's important is the sunsetting of the no ice contractors. We have a sunset date of 2028. And I'm personally uncomfortable with it. So that is something.
May
yeah,
I, with the chair's
Yes,
okay, may I make a suggestion?
sure.
Because there is not a presenter for the item, perhaps the chair can note that the issue was raised in the chair report
I will
to
do so.
the board.
I will do that. I will make that mention of the expiration date, which is very important. I agree with both you and Jessica. That said, as far as the turnover rate is over 50%. And for the Ava Community Advisory Committee. And I decided I'm just going to read my letter that has already been signed. It was a little short notice, so I didn't have time to really get in contact with every remaining member of the Community Advisory Committee. But this is what so far Davis and Indira and I have signed. The CAC Committee, Community Advisory Committee, and its members are both honored and pleased to serve Ava Community Energy and the community it serves. Being the voice of a community is both rewarding and at times difficult, especially when serving a community in need may go opposite to the logic of commercial budgetary constraints and financial prudence. This complexity runs into not just budgetary risks, but differing demographic needs such as weather, climate change stressors, available technologies, and the prioritization of financial and human resources. The CAC provides over a decade of institutional knowledge dating back to the inception of the community choice aggregation. Our members maintain vital connections to labor, technology sectors, community leaders, and governing institutions throughout the Bay Area. We are concerned that the current proposal to turn over 6 of our 11 members, more than half of the committee, may compromise our efficacy. While we welcome new perspectives, the loss of several founding members, some of who have a longer tenure than senior staff of AVA, represents a significant loss of institutional history. We respectfully request that the board reconsider the non-renewal of members who wish to continue their service. In particular, we advocate for the retention of Jim Lutz and Ernest Pacheco. Neither have reached their term limit and both offer invaluable expertise and established relationships with the energy sector and labor institutions within AVA territory. And once we talk with the 2 other remaining members and see if there are signatures, we will submit this to the board on Wednesday. Are there any other questions? Ed, please.
Oh, Alex. Yeah, no, I'd support that letter. If that was something that we present, I'd happy to support that letter. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, please, Alex. Go for it.
has this letter been submitted for the record? I mean, has anyone else been able to view this letter until this moment?
Not at this time, no.
So this is the first that it's being introduced?
This is more of, so I none of us were aware of some of the members moving on until Friday. And so there was very little time to respond. So at this point in time, we've had 3 responses out of what is going to look like 6. So we will, if the other members decide to sign, we'll submit that as official record for the board.
Okay, if I may,
Sure.
that the appointment process has proceeded along the same lines that have been approved previously. And by all means, your letter is welcome as part of the record. But I just want to point out that the half of people turning over is largely due to vacancies or to people who didn't apply. And in Mr. Pacheco's case, he did not apply for the seat for consideration. So just to be clear, is your letter proposing that people who didn't reapply be
Well,
appointed?
I know that a lot of this is very formal. And I believe that I do believe that Jim has applied and he has not termed out. I believe that Ernest Pacheco did apply, but he was late.
Sure.
And his application came in a few hours late or something along those lines. So this is, yes.
My apologies, but this topic should be agendized before we discuss it any
Any
further.
Okay, we'll do so. It's just a letter. It's just a letter. And it's a commentary from the advisory committee. So it's not something that we're going to vote on. And certainly it's up to the board. Okay. that said, Cynthia.
So, if I heard, Adrian correctly, can we agendize this, item tonight?
I think that the CAC chair report might be a place where it can be discussed further, but it should not be discussed during public comment. Like I said, the requirement to add an item to the agenda would be if this is truly an emergency that cannot be dealt with at any other time. And that would be something that the body would need to, but it should be rare that we add items. So if you'd like to discuss that further, perhaps we would, like I said, it would require a 2/3 vote of the body and the determination that it cannot be handled at any other time in any other way. We're thinking about something that is, right. Well, it would just be, we need to determine whether this is an emergency or not.
Well, I do believe that it's urgent, but it's also not an emergency. I also believe that what I'm just going to put out there then is that any of the remaining or current or outgoing members that wish to sign the letter that we will present can contact me and I will add them to the letter. So Cynthia, you can certainly add yourself or I can add you.
I would, like to add myself to the letter. And, excuse me, I do consider this, emergency, I do consider this somewhat of an emergency because you are changing the, I know people have term limits and all that, but we are losing substantial knowledge. And I wasn't aware of, the other folks leaving, so and this is something to read these materials and, I'm a social worker. I have learned a lot, but it does take time, for people to onboard and, know the history. And so I do kind of consider it an emergency. So.
Is that a motion?
This is a question for Adrian. The chair of the CAC can pull items from the board's consent agenda, can't they?
No, not from the boards. No, because this is not a board meeting.
Okay. But she will be at the board meeting.
Yes,
not-
she can. She can
She is a
discuss.
board member.
Yes, no, but I thought you meant at this meeting.
No,
my
not at this
apologies.
meeting.
At the board meeting,
At the board.
she can request to have to discuss items on the consent agenda. Yes,
Okay.
A board member.
A point of order.
Board-
a board
at
member
the
would need to vote.
CAC meeting.
Sorry,
She can make the request
To the board.
to the board.
And then we have to-
just as a point of order, if I may, the CAC chair is an ex officio member of the board. They're not a board member, so they're an ex officio board member. They can't pull items from the consent calendar. They could ask a board member to do so. But I also, as another point of order, this letter has not been submitted to the record, so the public has not had a chance to review this letter, nor have staff members. I haven't, as a staff member, I haven't seen this letter yet. So it seems like as a point of order, this all seems premature.
Yes, I had hoped to be able to present this at the meeting, but, given the time that we had to respond, this was too much of a task. So we will continue our request to get as much input as possible with the current CAC members, and then most likely present the letter in prior to the board meeting for Wednesday. Okay. And they can take it for what it is and make decisions on whether or not they want to do board stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, we should move on. This time, I would like to, item number C3 is the approval of the minutes. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? Jim? Okay. Oh, thank you.
I move the approval of the minutes.
And I'll second.
Thank you. So at this time, can we have public comment? Oh, sorry, public comment. Can we have any public comment for the minutes?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Adrian. Can you proceed?
Thank you. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Lockman,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes, and I appreciate the AI unofficial summary as well.
Member Hernandez. Yes. Chair Souza.
Yes,
Minutes are approved.
thank you. Well, let me see, at this moment, the CAC report for, I'm a little lacking in that. I believe that Indira went to Indira did go to the board meeting. And I believe she might have had some comments for the past March board meeting. And I'm looking for them. There we go. So from the March 16th board meeting, I'm going to try and be a little bit more brief. Actually, I don't have her. That was my comments. So unfortunately, I will not have a report for the previous board meeting. Did you happen to see anything come by from Indira?
No.
Okay. All right. I apologize for that. And we'll move on from there to our next item, which is C5 2026 California Legislative Program Administration Update. And I believe, Sam, is that your update? Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, Adrian. Want to quickly begin with consent item 8 here. This is a consent item that we've placed on the board agenda for this Wednesday. Bringing this to your attention, we are moving this as an updated version of our legislative program. This is something we do every year where we go back in, we update it, we make administrative changes. This does not change. This is a non-substantive change to the program. The program, as a quick outline, is what sets the work and sets the agenda for how my team, the legislative team, works in Sacramento, how we do our work in Washington. It identifies our priorities. It talks about the various tools we have to use. It's a public document and it's approved by the board every year. This is the 2026 update to it. As I said, the changes are non-substantive. There are 3 changes that I would like to bring your attention to. We clarified and simplified some of the descriptive language. We try to take fresh eyes to it every year. We added autonomy as a standalone entry in the list of our positions. This has always been included, but it was embedded in many of the others. We added a separate autonomy section. And finally, we retitled it from the legislative program to the legislative platform to more appropriately reflect its role and to better match industry standards. This is, again, a non-substantive change. We brought this to the MRL last week, and we'll be bringing it to the board on the consent agenda on Wednesday for their approval. So I just wanted to make sure that you all saw that, given it is a change to our legislative platform, which will now be known, legislative program, which will now be known as the legislative platform if adopted by the board. Perfect. Happy to take your comments, but it's these are non-substantive changes to the document. But it is something, because it's a board approved document, when we do make annual changes, we have to get it approved once again.
Thank you. To summarize, I think that was the previous legislative, are you talking about the 2 items that were involving first PCIA, and the second one was the adequacy, so those 2 items specifically, or were there other items on that?
I'm sorry, Chair. So last month we brought forth 2 positions.
Right.
This month, we're bringing forth a 2026 update to the legislative program as 1 item.
Okay.
And that is what you've seen here.
Okay.
The next item, when we're ready to move forward to that, will be our 2026 legislative positions we're recommending the board take positions on 8 bills. So we'll get to that once we complete this, but this was more, we have to do this. We have to make sure the board is aware of any changes to our previously program, hopefully soon platform. And that was the only, so slightly different agenda items.
Very good.
I was seeing that this seems like you're focusing primarily on your work with lobbyists and staff work directly with legislators and their staff. I would recommend that the AVA legislative staff also communicate with, and when appropriate, work with local and state non-governmental organizations and labor unions. That will just, increase the reach and the potency of efforts where it's appropriate for those organizations to collaborate. And I'm sure many other members of the CAC would be happy to make those introductions and connections. But I do recommend that you expand your venue to include not just paid lobbyists and paid staff, but go after other organizations and collaborate with them of course, on things where you can. Some things you can't.
Thank you, Jim.
So that's just a comment, and it might be good for the board to hear that.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions in the room? Are there any public comments?
Chair, if I may, just to clarify, are we going over the presentation or no? There's no presentation.
We
today?
will, not for this item, but we
Okay.
will for the next item.
Okay, thank you.
What is the substance of this item? Just the format?
The substance,
This item is just the format?
we've changed some of the formatting for this document as well as some of the wording. And as I mentioned, we added the autonomy as a focus, but this is not a substantive change to the legislative platform.
Yep.
Jim, I did want to point you towards the page 10 of the legislative platform, which speaks about working with broader community organizations as part of this. The goal of the platform is to discuss how and to what end we engage with the legislature. So the legislature is the sort of target audience of this. And you'll see there a number of organizations and partners and others that we work with to engage with the legislature. Page 14. There you go. Perfect. And so that's really, I think I take what you're saying. The way that we're framing this is for our legislative work, here's where we're working toward, and here are the tools we use for that legislative work. I know the agency works deeply with many of these organizations on lots of different things, but that falls somewhat outside of the remit of what the legislative program is focused on. I hope that's helpful in explaining the differentiation there.
Jim, do you recognize any of these?
Oh, yeah. But it's again, I think you're limiting yourself.
Okay.
And you would gain strength, pull in the Sierra Club, that's gonna carry some weight when it's appropriate.
Sure.
Pull in the labor unions, that when it's appropriate. And, you've got some, have had some on the CAC. That'll give you more weight. So, that's a comment to broaden your horizon.
Helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Sam. Are there any comments online? With that, are there any public comments online? No. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close this item and we'll move on to the next item, which is the next legislative item. Are you going to do that too, Sam? Thank you very much. That would be item C6 2026 California legislative positions, which is a board action item.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now we're to the meat of it, and this is Peter. This is what you were asking about. Perfect. Well, thanks again. As you all know me, I'm Sam. I lead our legislative work here. I've got my colleagues Kendall and Dominic here today. We're here. Last month we came to you and presented the big picture of what we were looking at legislatively and what we were paying attention to. Now we're here a month later, and we would like to present to you what we're recommending that the board take positions on. So we're recommending the board take positions on 8 bills, and we'll get to them specifically. But this will be in sort of we phased this as 6 meetings. We did 3 meetings with the MRL, CAC, and board on the universe of what's going on. And now we're doing MRL, CAC, and board on our 8 specific legislative positions. Next slide, please. Great. So you've all seen this before. This is where we are in the schedule. We've passed the bill introduction deadline. We generally, for the most part, know what bills will be discussed, although that remains subject to change as always. We have an end of May deadline that you can see for bills to pass the first house. So it means if they were introduced in the assembly, they have to pass the assembly by then, vice versa with the Senate. And then after May, they will swap, and bills must then be approved by the corresponding house to be brought into law. Another thing to note here is the June 15th budget deadline, which is of course high on everyone's list. We'll get a May revise, which will be likely early to mid-May, which will be the administration's view on what the budget looks like for the coming year with updated tax returns. And then the legislature will have until June 15th to finalize their version of the budget, which will be an agreement between the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's office, likely. Moving forward from here, you have the August deadline for second house, and then of course, end of September deadline for gubernatorial action. Next slide. So this year we saw roughly 1,800 bills were introduced before the February 20th bill introduction deadline. This is in addition to bills that were held over from last year for future action. Of these, about 80 bills were related to our joint powers agreement. And these are the 80-ish or so bills that we're paying attention to and keeping an eye on in Sacramento. At the end of this slide deck, you will see, and you have it in your packet, all of the bills, the 80-ish bills that we're keeping an eye on by bill number. So feel free to, no need to scroll. Feel free to review that at any point. And if it's helpful in future, when somebody says something about a bill, you can immediately click and be able to move forward with that. Next slide, please. So we had 80 bills that we were paying attention to. We wanted to take a deeper dive on 33 of them that fit into the buckets that you'll see listed here from the legislative platform that we have listed. I'm sorry, the legislative program, hopefully soon to be platform. These 33 bills were the bills that we brought to you all and to the board last month. We spent the month since then analyzing the bills. You can go to the next slide, please. Both in partnership with cross-functional staff, Cal CCA, Cal ETC, and of course, board members and you all. And we dug into them. And today we're here with 8 positions that we are asking the board on Wednesday to take a position on. Of those bills, those are bills that we believe have a real impact, either A, directly impact our work, B, support our JPA and have broad-based support, or C, are bills where AVA has a specific resonance and our perspective can help move the needle one way or the other on the bill. And those are the 8 bills that we're recommending for positions. Next slide. So here are the bills themselves. We're recommending 3 bills in the support category and 3 bills in support if amended. You will see that as we've looked into these, we're looking at balancing both the intention of the bill and what it seeks to do, as well as the impact. But they are without proponents and opponents for each bill. And we'll get into each bill specifically in a minute. And as we go through, you'll see we've tried to give you a good sense of which organizations and groups fall on which side, either in support or opposition for each of these 8 bills. One thing I wish to note, we're having more bills than we have in the past on the support if amended category. We think that this is a very important opportunity for us to call out bills that we really like in theory, but still advocate for changes to improve them over the coming weeks and months of the legislative session. If we were to take full support positions, we wouldn't have really any leverage to go in and ask for changes. So support if amended doesn't mean we dislike the bill. In fact, it means we like the bill a lot. We just have a few places where we want to see it improved. So I ask that you keep that in mind as we walk through the bills, and that's why you're seeing a lot of support of amended bills. You also see that a lot of these bills we've discussed in the past or something like them. AB 1577 from Assemblymember Bauer Cahan looks a lot like a bill that she brought last year. SB 222 from Senator Wiener looks a lot like a bill he brought last year, and as does SB 913 from Senator Becker. I only highlight this to say that bills come, they take time sometimes. Sometimes they're not ready on their first go around. Sometimes they get vetoed and they come back again. So this is a common process, and keep that in mind as we work, as our team works to improve bills that we like, in addition to fighting against bills that we don't. All right, next slide. As you can see, we're not recommending any opposed or opposed with less amended positions this year at this point. Now, it's not to say there aren't bills that we wouldn't like to see changed. There certainly are. I'll give you an example of the SB 1215 on vehicle charger regulations or SB 1295 on procurement obligations. But the reality is that we're still pretty early in the legislative session. So we expect things to change significantly. So in a number of cases, we don't feel it's yet prudent to recommend to the board to take an opposition position because the bill is, as we have learned through our work, going to undergo dramatic changes, and we want to reserve judgment for that time later on. I would note last month we had a long and fruitful conversation with you all about large load bills. you'll see there's only one of a number of large loads, data center bills, that we're recommending a position for. This is because of these bills, and Kendall will get into this in a moment, there's lots of movement on each of them. There's pieces of each of them that we like, pieces of each of them that we don't like, and we expect all of them to be brought later on in this session into a package of bills that will move forward, at which point we'll likely come back to the board with a stronger position. But right now, there's just so much in flux, we don't think it is prudent for the board to take an official position as of yet. All right, next slide. Okay, so we grouped each of the bills by our 5 topics, as we have done in the past. Those 5 topics are affordability, protecting community choice, decarbonization, local development, and increasing bill understanding and transparency. We're going to dig into the bills each of one of them here. My colleagues Kendall and Dominic will do that. But before I pass it over to Dominic, in the case of affordability, there were a lot of different proposals floating around, most of them concerning IOUs directly, not CCAs, and the IOU return on capital. There were a number of those. There were 2, but when we looked at the sort of the broad landscape of affordability bills, there were sort of 2 that had a particular resonance with the agency. And those are the 2 that you can see here, AB 1266 and AB 1975. One thing I would note is that these both build on, like we have seen in other cases, both build off past efforts. AB 1266 is something that's been moving in the regulatory space for a long time. AB 1975 builds on approaches that we made last year. So as I mentioned before, these are multi-year processes. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it to Dominic to get into the details of each of these bills. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. Sure, we'll get things started. So the first affordability measure staff is recommending AVA weigh in on is AB 1975 from Assemblymember Nick Schultz, which essentially seeks to encourage greater use of the existing grid to avoid, to the greatest extent possible, expensive infrastructure projects and the costs of which ultimately fall on ratepayers. This bill does a number of things. I'll walk you through them pretty quickly here. First, it will require the PUC to establish a grid utilization metric, or a way to calculate how much load is being used as a percentage of overall distribution grid capacity. IOUs must then use the metric to report quarterly on how much grid capacity is being used across their service territories. At the same time, the Public Utilities Commission would establish an annual grid utilization minimum target that each utility must meet, along with financial incentives or disincentives if the utilities achieve or fail to achieve that target. And finally, it would require IOUs to propose grid utilization programs designed to help them achieve those minimum targets, including programs for load flexibility. Also note that there's language throughout this bill that requires these activities be cost-effective, feasible, grounded in customer benefits. So you can see that the intent here is to incentivize rather than mandate a certain amount of load flexibility and encourage utilities to tap into distributed customer-sided resources. In this way, it also aligns with AVA's priority to support local development by increasing the value of DER as distributed energy. Now, while we like the overall intent of this bill, we believe this can meaningfully drive down costs for customers. We are asking for support if amended position with the goal of working to ensure CCAs like AVA also receive credit and proper financial incentives for the load flexibility programs we're already running, like the AVA Smart Home Battery program that was just recently launched, or other programs that we may establish in the future. These VPP or load flex initiatives help make our grid more efficient and should be recognized for their contributions toward helping utilities meet the grid utilization targets established by this bill. As currently written, CCAs aren't expressly eligible for any of these incentives. So we want to make sure that we are included in there. We also recommend amending the bill so that CCAs are explicitly given the option on a voluntary basis to propose their own grid utilization programs, ensuring a level playing field of competition in this space so that IOU-run programs aren't the only game in town for purposes of meeting this grid utilization target, again, established by this bill. Last thing I'll note here is that AB 1975, this bill, it has been scheduled, to be heard in the Assembly Energy Committee on April 22nd. So coming up soon here. So there's not a list of registered supporters or opposition. Environment California, as you see up there, is the sponsor of the bill. And we do expect there potentially could be some pushback from utilities and maybe some labor groups because it aims to limit the distribution grid expansion. And I will we'll move on to the next slide and I'll pass it over to Kendall for the next one.
Awesome. Thank you, Dominic and CAC for being here. With our next bill, making electricity more affordable, we have AB 2266 by Assemblymember Schultz. So this bill focuses on something a bit more technical and wonky, but really very important for affordability and system efficiency, which is how the state values resource adequacy, or RA, capacity, and structures compliance requirements across those programs. Today, the system uses multiple valuation methodologies to assess the reliability contribution of different resource types across resource adequacy and integrated resource planning, or IRP, which can create unnecessary complexity, administrative burden, and ultimately higher costs for load-serving entities. AB 2266 would require the CPUC by January 2030 to adopt a single uniform capacity evaluation methodology, meaning one consistent approach to measuring the reliability contribution for each resource type when setting both RA and procurement obligations. We chose to recommend a support position because 1, this reduces administrative and regulatory burden. 2, it does align with positions AVA has already taken in regulatory proceedings. And ultimately, it contributes to lower compliance costs, which directly supports our affordability for our customers. The bill passed through Assembly Utilities and Energy Committee just last Wednesday and has been re-referred to the Assembly Appropriation Committee, where its next deadline to move will be May 15th. And with that, I'll keep moving it on. For our next bucket, we have protecting community choice. So absolutely, yes. So our next bucket for protecting community choice, we see AB 1577, introduced by Assemblymember Bauer Kahan. So as Sam mentioned earlier, while we are actively taking a broad set of, we're tracking a broad set of bills related to data center growth, including bills such as SB 978, SB 886, 887, and AB 2383, we have been very intentional about taking a limited number of formal positions at this stage. Many of these proposals are still evolving, particularly around complex issues like tariff design, cost allocation, and procurement obligations, and are actively being negotiated among stakeholders. In several cases, the implications for CCA remain uncertain, and key policy questions overlap with ongoing proceedings at the CPUC. Given this fluid landscape, we believe it's more effective to stay actively engaged through monitoring, stakeholder coordination, including via CalCCA, and targeted advocacy, rather than taking an early formal position that may limit our flexibility down the line. We will continue to evaluate these bills as they develop and reassess positions as the impacts to CCAs and our ability to shape those outcomes become more clear. In contrast, we see AB 1577. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. AB 1577 is a bill where the policy direction here is a bit more defined and actionable, and where the impacts to CCAs are clearer and more limited in scope. It focuses on improving transparency rather than restructuring markets or imposing new cost allocation frameworks, which makes it both more stable at this stage and more appropriate for a formal position. This bill is focused on improving transparency around data center energy and water use, which is a critical gap as these loads scale quickly. It will require ongoing reporting of energy consumption and direct the state to incorporate that data into long-term planning. We support the intent of this bill as better outcomes or better data improves grid planning, procurement decisions, and reliability outcomes, and it helps us ensure the state can proactively manage large load growth rather than react to it. However, we are recommending a support if amended position here because the current reporting timelines may not align with exactly how CCAs may actually receive this information and data, particularly from IOU to CCA to then large load customers. So without these adjustments, there is a risk of creating a compliance obligation that are outside of our control. Our amendment request is narrow and practical. We are just seeking a reasonable reporting timeline so that transparency goals can be achieved without unintended compliance risks. This bill recently passed out of the Assembly's Utilities and Energy Committee as well this past Wednesday and now faces a May 15th deadline to advance out of appropriations. It has drawn expected opposition from tech, data center stakeholders, reflecting broader industry concerns with new reporting requirements. And with that, I'll move to the next slide. Thank you. As California sees rapid growth in large energy users, such as data centers, the state is increasingly focused on two parallel challenges: ensuring these new large loads do not shift costs onto existing customers, and aligning their energy use with the state's decarbonization goals. Policymakers are exploring different approaches to address this, ranging from broad changes to rate structures, including the bill SB 943 covered in our previous preview last month, to more direct mechanisms that link new load growth to cost responsibility and emissions outcomes. If you move to the next slide, that'd be lovely. Thank you. We have chosen to support SB 1168 as this takes a more targeted and policy-aligned approach to these challenges. Rather than restructuring core elements of the rate framework, SB 1168 focuses on establishing a clear signal. Large, energy-intensive loads should both contribute to system costs and face incentives to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. This makes it more actionable and aligned tool for advancing both affordability and decarbonization objectives. What this bill really does, SB 1168 would impose surcharges on electricity and natural gas consumption from large data centers and direct those funds towards reducing wildfire-related costs included in rates. From AVA's perspective, the rationale for this support position is relatively straightforward. It complements the state's decarbonization policies while disincentivizing fossil fuel use. It aligns with broader policy goals of cost causation, ensuring these customers driving new system impacts contribute to allocated costs. And lastly, it helps reduce cost pressure on our customers by offsetting a portion of wildfire-related costs with revenues from high-impact loads. SB 1168 is scheduled to be heard in the Senate Energy Utilities Committee next Monday. Sorry, that would be today, with currently no registered opposition at this time.
Okay, I think we have some questions.
Absolutely.
I'd kind of like to take a little break, and I know you had some questions. Did you?
I think the plan is we're gonna go through a few
For us
more
to go through it
slides
first?
and then and Cynthia,
So,
I'm noting your
yeah.
question and then we'll come back and go bill by bill.
Okay, make your notes and we'll get back to the questions. Thank you.
I got you. Thank you. Just flag me down for.
I didn't want to get
bill
too
questions.
far along.
I
No,
just want to
yeah, no
get us,
worries.
I want to get us through.
Well, lovely. I'll go ahead and move to the next slide.
Great. Yeah. All right.
Thank you,
I'll
Emily.
take things back over. I know it's a lot of content, so I'll try to get through this for you. So we'll round things out with our final four bill position recommendations, all bills that we view as supporting our local development priorities by way of encouraging distributed energy resource adoption. Note that two of these bills are ones that you saw as part of our preview last month, and the other two have either been since amended from a spot bill or have been sort of added to our priority list. So we'll jump right in. We can start the next slide, Adrian. So SB 222, this is a bill from Senator Scott Wiener that would standardize and streamline local permitting for residential heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC systems. These are all electric, low and zero emission alternatives to traditional gas appliances. This bill requires cities and counties to offer an option for asynchronous inspections where a contractor and a building inspector do not need to be simultaneously present during an installation inspection. It would also implement an automated real-time permitting process for the install of these appliances. It also places limits on how much cities and counties can charge permitting fees for these installs as well. You may recall last year that AVA supported SB 282, which is substantially a very similar bill that failed to pass the legislature last year. So Senator Wiener is back with this bill, SB 222, after making some minor changes to the previous legislation, but is substantially similar to that. So why the push for this? That all comes with a backdrop of a state target to install 6 million heat pump appliances by 2030, and Bay Area Air District rules requiring certain furnace and water heater replacements be zero emissions starting in 2027. So very soon, essentially making it so that they must be replaced by all electric heat pump appliances. So permitting costs and delays have been identified as key challenges to accelerating the adoption of heat pump systems, which are all critical to reducing greenhouse gas emissions from residential and commercial buildings, where roughly a quarter of the state's emissions come from. You can see below a few of the bill's supporters, along with some registered opposition from rural counties, CSAC, Cal Cities. Now I'll say that AVA's local development team has worked with our member cities to support permitting automation updates in the past. And we see this bill as aligning really with that effort to lower the barriers to electrification and support building decarb. So we are asking for a support position on SB 222. It was passed in the Senate, passed out of the Senate in January, so a few months ago. It is in the Assembly, but it has not yet been assigned to a committee or scheduled for a hearing there. So it's in the second house. All right, keep it moving. So next we have AB 2389. This is from Assembly Member Jackie Irwin. This would extend an existing property tax exclusion for customer-sided solar and solar sited on property owned by a public entity for an additional 5 years through the end of 2031. This exemption includes paired battery storage devices and appliances, or applies, to both directly owned systems and those financed through third-party arrangements, such as leases and PPAs. Overall, we view this extension as critical to maintaining momentum for rooftop solar and storage adoption, especially as the federal government is doing away with clean energy tax credits that have supported customer solar in the past. It also aligns with AVA's work to install solar and battery systems on critical municipal facilities, which is ongoing. We also know that in order to get the most grid value for distributed solar systems and maximize load flexibility, these systems need to be paired with battery systems. As it stands, California has an abundance of solar power available during the day, during off-peak hours. And in order to spread that abundant, cheap energy to peak hours and provide meaningful benefits to customers and the grid, batteries are essential. So today's rooftop solar tariff structures reflect that, and we believe this bill should too. There's a large motivation behind, AVA launching its smart home battery VPP program, which incentivizes customers to install new solar and storage or add storage to an existing solar system. State programs like the Demand Side Grid Support System, DSGS, are also incentivizing batteries as a way to enhance statewide reliability and affordability. So with all that said, staff is recommending a support if amended position on AB 2389 with the intent to require solar systems be paired with batteries in order to qualify for this property tax exclusion. AB 2389, this bill has been heard in the Assembly Revenue and Tax Committee April 6th. It's now sitting in the committee sense files. So it has not moved from that committee, but it has been, so the process has been kicked off. Keep moving, got two more. Great. So moving on to SB 868, this is another bill from Senator Wiener. This one would essentially legalize portable solar systems in California, also known as balcony or plug-in solar. And exempt plug-in devices that meet certain capacity limits and safety standards from all interconnection requirements. It also prohibits utilities from imposing fees or requiring permission before a customer can plug in, instead allowing utilities to require basic notification from a customer if they are installing a plug-in solar device. So what are those requirements in this bill? In order to qualify for an interconnection exemption, a plug-in system must have a max output of 1,200 watts, be certified by the Underwriters Lab, which is a nationally recognized testing body, and meet NEC and CEC, so that's National Electrical Code and California Electrical Code standards. It must also include a feature that isolates it from the building's electrical system to prevent backfeeding. So we are recommending AVA take a support if amended position. So overall access to low cost plug-in systems without needing to undergo lengthy and expensive interconnection agreements will give many more California households, including and especially those who rent or live in an apartment, the ability to produce their own energy and reduce their electric bills. We see this as a key force of us, supporting this bill. But for the reasons I just talked about in the previous slide on AB 2389, we also believe that this greater access to solar must include a push to pair devices with batteries to maximize load flexibility and value to the grid. So we would seek amendments to this effect for this bill, specifically requiring plug-in systems to be paired with a battery in order to qualify for the interconnection exemption, in addition to ensuring that these systems use modern inverter technology. SB 868 it passed out of the Senate Energy Committee on March 19th with a 14-0 vote. It is now slated to be heard in the Senate Appropriations Committee on April 20th, so next week. And finally, I think we have one more. Great. So for our final recommendation, we have SB 913 by Senator Josh Becker. This bill would provide a pathway for aggregated distributed energy resources to qualify as resource adequacy, or in other words, receive credit for the reliability value that they provide to the grid. It would also allow LSEs, load serving entities like AVA, to count aggregated distributed energy resources toward our resource adequacy, compliance, and procurement obligations. This aligns with what AVA has been advocating for in the regulatory environment through a variety of proceedings, specifically seeking to create California independent system operator market mechanisms for this. We like that this will accelerate those market integration pathways, encourage wider adoption and use of distributed resources, and give us, as an agency, the flexibility to include aggregated DERs to meet our RA obligations, potentially lowering overall costs for AVA and our customers. So while we like this overall bill, we are recommending a supportive amended position, once again, to improve one section of this bill to ensure that RA procurement rules do not favor aggregated DER resources over other sources. In other words, we want to ensure that we maintain the flexibility to decide which resources we want to contract for RA, while still ensuring that DRs are an option and not a mandate for that. I'll note that the author has just recently accepted amendments proposed by the Senate Energy staff that could address our concerns. The amendments were just released today, so we're taking some time to review them and to process them. Potentially, if they do, we could change to a support position, but we are still looking at those more thoroughly. So, and that is it for me. Pass things back to Sam.
Thanks, Dominic. Next slide. I'll note we did not propose any bill positions for either increasing bill transparency and understanding or our other grab bag category of bills that we were tracking. In most cases, in nearly all cases, it's because bills that were following under this rubric will not have a direct impact on the agency. And in some cases, it's because they're now been transformed into study bills. So places there where it's okay, great, we can move on past those. Next slide. Just quickly look, as I mentioned, review the calendar. And as you heard Kendall and Dominic mention, we are sort of at crunch time. And so that's why we're bringing these position recommendations to the board at this point. So next slide. Last but not least, obviously this is where we are today. We will bring these on Wednesday. We, of course, are still looking at a few different bills, and there are other things that are constantly evolving, and we might be bringing more bills to the board's attention in May. All right, I know you have questions. I'm happy to go back through them, but I wanted to finish it out so we could get through the whole process. Jim, I remember you had a question, but I defer to the chair.
Okay, this is not so much about the particular bills, but it's a question of, although it applies to AB 2266 and SB 913. And that's a question of how important is RA for AVA? And I guess the easy way to answer that would be what percent of the overall procurement budget goes for RA? If it's, 2 or 3%, then yeah, these would be nice, but we don't have to go to the mat on them. If they're 10 or 20%, then yeah, we want to push it a lot harder. So the question is, what's the relative worth of RA in terms of our nearly $1 billion procurement budget?
Jim, I'm not from the RA team, but I can speak to what they have mentioned in past board meetings. And I think you should take it to note that we are supporting 2 bills that are in fact sponsoring bills via CalCCA. One of the 2 is for RA transactability.
Yeah.
But it is upwards of the latter number that you said, 20 to 30% of the procurement budget, not 2 to 3. I wouldn't want to speak to an exact number, but it is much, much higher than that.
Okay, so it is important.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then another one is on 868. I would speak in favor of changing that to support, even if it doesn't get amended, and maybe And the reasoning for that is requiring batteries would significantly increase the cost of these systems. In the handout that came with it, it sounded like they expect the cost to be about $500 once it takes effect. That's without batteries. And I imagine batteries would double the cost of that. And I'm just guessing, but double or maybe even triple the cost of a system, depending on how much battery you put into it. So, but even without batteries, these systems do save customers money. So but without batteries, the money they save hurts Ava actually. So, but so statewide, the uptake would be much higher because the prices would be lower. And then I think it'd be better if instead of amending this, Ava start planning programs to incentivize batteries that go with balcony and plug-in solar. And as part of the incentivization, they have to participate in the VPP programs or whatever programs that JP's crew manages to set up by then. But that would give Ava a meaningful way to interact with customers in a way that benefits Ava. If we get Ava gets the batteries in the VPP, and I think it'd be a good promotion of Ava's brand. So, yeah, go buy your balcony solar at Home Depot, and oh, by the way, Ava will fund the battery and provide incentives to make it even better. And that way, almost look at it as a marketing program instead of a energy program. So that's just my thought on it.
Thank you, Jim. Were there any other questions regarding the presentation?
Yeah.
You want the microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to inquire more about Senate Bill 1168. Isn't just for clarification, natural gas is still a carbon? Am I
I'm sorry.
natural gas?
So I'm just, I can speak to the bill.
Yeah, but I just want to ask, I'm correct that natural gas is a carbon?
Natural gas is GHG emitting fuel.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't, well, I'm having difficulty, having a surcharge on natural gas, to help offset, the wildfire related costs, currently embedded in customer rates. How is this bill helping us? I'm just curious. I'm puzzled.
Yeah.
I'm puzzled how this bill, helps.
Sure. Well, thanks for your question. So quickly, can you just quick vision on the structure and what the senator is pursuing? The senator has said that he is pursuing a bill here that would, so he views it as sort of pay their way as community members in the California energy community. And that the way it would work is it would first implement the surcharge on any natural gas that is used by the facility, likely in backup power generation, but any other natural gas that's used on site, with the vision that they would encourage electrification of that, but it would then continue to assess that fee on the inputs of natural gas to the electrification that powers the site. So this is not something that would end once you had that electrification process. Originally, the bill had that money going towards CARE and FARA to offset. Now, it wouldn't increase the total amount that's available for CARE and FARA. It would offset non-CARE FARA contributions into the program. That was shifted under the most recent amendments to instead offset portions of the wildfire spending that are embedded in the customer bill.
Okay, if you.
Kim, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that very importantly, I think these data centers are being told again and again that energy is a resource in limited quantities. And when they're looking for solutions to that, a lot of them may turn towards non-electric forms or use of power. And I think that in order to kind of shift those market incentives, they're essentially saying we're going to make that more expensive for data centers, not only to reduce fossil fuel consumption in the state, but also to encourage electrification. So of those HVAC systems, of those heat water pumps when they're cooling their AI technology, et cetera. So again, it's encouraging electrification while disincentivizing the use of fossil fuels and making data centers pay for that. And when taxing them for those things, you're utilizing those taxes and creating a fund that then is directly attributed to on-bill wildfire charges, which is a large driver for affordability issues in the state, but also a large driver of just rates in general across California.
So, the surcharge is a disincentive, am I?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Am I-
Yes.
Okay.
It's a
just-
tax. It's a tax on the
Yeah.
use of natural gases.
You know, this is somewhat on point. KQED had something, I regrettably fell asleep, but I'm gonna listen to it again. But it was a 1 hour, I think it was last Thursday on data centers. And there is one town in California, you may know the town, and the town is voting on whether to have a data center or not. They're actually voting. And so you know, these are good bills, but I would like to see some more restrictions and maybe voter approval of data centers within their area.
Thank you.
Because it is gonna ultimately cost the consumer more. And not only that, there is, water and other hazards. I'm gonna use the word hazards by having these large data centers. That's just my own opinion.
No, thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Are there, Ed?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to hear more about your legislative work, your research, your analysis. Really look forward to supporting this and being able to listen and ask a couple clarifying questions to the bill that Cynthia spoke to. Before, I used to have these funds go to the low income ratepayer fund, but that's now shifting a rate assistance program account. Now there's a shift to this measure to fund wildfire related costs. So we're not doing something to do something else. We're looking to support it as amended. So we're going to take up some money from one bucket and move it to another bucket. Is that right? Or no?
So it's not taking money. Let me see if I can explain this properly. It's not taking money. The absolute amount of money that is needed for either wildfire or for low-income support programs is the absolute amount of money that will be spent is not changing. What it is doing is, so there's a certain amount of money that needs to be spent. This bill would send the funds collected towards, and both of those at the moment, excuse me, let me go back. Both of those have a ratepayer component that are paid by all ratepayers. What this bill is doing is offsetting a portion of one bucket or another bucket from that ratepayer charge. So it's not saying there's more or less money available in the wildfire funds. It's not saying there's more or less money available in the low-income support programs. It is saying that less money from the general power electricity purchasing public will be needed to meet that threshold of either program A or program B.
So I think I'm hearing you say you're shifting the responsibility to fund these programs away from the general consumer to the people who are running the data centers and passing that cost there somewhat.
We're not, the
But
state
the
is,
bill-
but
you're-
yes,
I'm
that
hearing
is
you
correct.
say that at this meeting. Also, I think in the presentation it talks about the surcharge on gas only, but it's gas and electric.
So it's gas, natural gas used, and then it's natural gas used to power the electricity.
Got it. Okay, good. Because I wasn't quite sure because there's language in the summary loaded up more electricity and gas, but the bullet point says gas. So it was a little confusing for me.
Thank you. We'll take,
No
we'll make
worries.
sure we clarify.
So in regarding to the other bills that you're not looking at, there is one maybe that talks about PCIA. Is that right? That is not being presented right now.
Correct. Last month, we moved the sponsored Cal CCA sponsored PCIA bill and the Cal CCA sponsored RA transactability bills we've already elected the board has already taken a support position for each of those bills.
Perfect. Thank you for catching me up. And then I think I heard Dominic speak about the AVA Community Smart Home Battery Program. I just recently looked into that and I didn't really know that I didn't have the grid rights. So that's something that as a consumer, I'm not quite aware about not having the grid rights because I'm working with Sunrun and they have a Cal Ready program. So I get a rebate from them being flexible, but I can't participate in the AVA Community Energy program because I don't have the grid rights. So you're saying you want people to install batteries, but just to clarify, you have to also own the battery to be able to deploy or have the partnership for the grid rights. So something, the nuance I'm picking up on, because I was looking forward to that small home battery item discussion. So I don't know if there's something in the future to share more, because I use a lot of AI data powered source to do that analysis and look at the terms and conditions to make sure I was in violation. But yeah, something about education will be there about. We're hearing you say you want to do more battery install with solar, but there's a limitation if you don't have the grid rights. So just understanding if we don't really lobby or just get clarification on those kind of speaking of about the programs that you mentioned earlier about encouraging, incentivizing more people to get battery storage. So I think that was just a clarifying question.
Chair.
Annie. Annie, would you like to speak on any of these?
I did. I just wanted to respond to Member Hernandez's comment. Is now the appropriate time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll ask JP, who's in the room, to jump in if there's additional details, but just wanted to respond to that comment about grid service rights. You're absolutely right. Most customers probably don't have a strong awareness or understanding about what that means. And any third-party owner, typically in that agreement, they have claimed those grid service rights for themselves. Right now, only direct ownership of systems does qualify for our smart home battery program. However, we are actively working with those major market players from third-party ownership so that even when you would sign up with someone like Sunrun, they have the grid services rights, they could then participate in the program. And by the incentives that we provide to them, they would then sort of flow through those benefits, those financial benefits to their customers. But those negotiations are actively in process right now. And I forget what the timeline is, JP. Maybe you could help me on that one or add any additional details. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Yeah, we are currently in negotiation with a few of the aggregators, so that's supposed to be coming up in the next couple of quarters. It's a pretty substantial negotiation with those vendors, because in that scenario, we're really looking for those deliverables to be very forecastable and reliable. So that is something that's underway. Thanks, Annie. And also it just speaks a little bit also to the immaturity of the market. There's a lot of different programs, a lot of different enrollment checks that we have to do because people sign up for programs like this and they don't really know what they're signing up for. So something that we're building into our processes to try to make sure that customers have clear authority, or aggregators, in this case, a party like Sunrun has the clear authority to dispatch the battery, on our behalf, or, for the customer. So it's, there's a lot going on there.
Thank you. If I can continue, Chair, just to clarify and thank for the clarification, the work. And the only reason I brought it up, because if you had a lobby for some reason, then that would be great to use the power of the legislative hammer to help us get there. That's why I was just really bringing that dialogue. And I'm just curious about pass-through, because there could be a portion where the Sunrun, example, might want to keep 80% to minimize the cost of having incentive programs, or maybe passing around 20% to the consumer. So it just depends how that negotiation goes through. But thank you for taking that lead. And thank you, Annie, as well.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Thank you, JP. I'm really hoping that the rooftop, or balcony solar and other technologies that are on are have recently been won will allow that that loophole into the grid that people need so that we can install solar at will. But that said, yes. Well, I have a question. All right. On the first bill that we had supporting, which was Bill 222, the permitting, I'm very familiar, and I think Jim may also be very familiar with the permitting process of heat pumps, especially water heat pumps. Sorry, not water, the HVAC heat pumps. It's a new technology. They can be very tricky to install. There's refrigerant, there's ducts that are very leaky. There's proper placement, proper sizing, all of these things that go into the permitting process of a heat pump. I'm worried that how deeply they will bypass all of these checks on that particular bill. Jim, do you have any knowledge into that? Okay, so I'm an ECC rater. I go into people's homes and I check the work of contractors, and I can tell you it's fairly dismal. There's a lot of cheating. There's a lot of shortcuts that are taken in the installations. Just want to be very cautious about bypassing too many of the Title 24 requirements for permitting. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, are there any further questions in the room? Okay, any questions from the CAC online? Okay, are there any public comments in the room? Very good.
Okay. We do have one hand raised.
Okay,
Kathleen Beers, recognized for 3 minutes.
thank you.
Hi, this is Catherine Beers. Thanks for the thorough comments about the legislation program and details. Had a clarifying question related to the grid resourcing of how does the entity relevant to that determine how the resource adequacy is measured? In particular, curious to know more about if it's based on like the rated use of the wires. The reason being that with climate change, we're getting hotter weather and stuff, so that when it's very hot, the electricity wires can sag and contact trees and spark and cause fires. So I'd be curious to know more about the utilization of the grid. We do want to increase the utilization of the grid, but not at the expense of causing more fires. So curious about that detail. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Catherine. That's a good point. Does anybody want to address the grid, the increase of grid, I guess?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond quickly, Chair. If
Okay,
you want.
thank you.
Just quickly on AB 1975, which I think what the commenter was referencing, there is language in the bill. It essentially leaves it up to the Public Utilities Commission to determine how that is measured, and set that minimum for the utilities to meet in terms of the percentage of the grid minimum that they meet to use. So a lot of it, the legislation itself doesn't get into specifics, but it calls on the PUC to sort of set that out in the regulatory process. So those details are to be sort of worked out there.
Okay, little bit familiar with that as well. I know that PG&E uses a metric that will set it, say, I don't know, I'm going to just say arbitrarily 80 to 85% of the grid's, I guess, potential. And at times there have been blackouts and brownouts because of the grid potential being approached. So that is a tricky subject. All right, very good. Are there any further questions? All right, is this a board item? So we would. Oh, Jim? Okay. That's okay.
I'd like to move support with the exception of the balcony solar, change it to support instead of support it if amended. So to change it from to approve the recommendation except for the balcony solar one, and change that from support if amended to just plain support.
Did you want to put that up for a vote? Pardon?
Need a second. You need a second.
I need a second. So we'd like to ask for a second for Jim's request to go to full support without amendment. Do we have a second?
So actually, maybe I should put it into two pieces. One is supports the staff proposal as presented on everything except SB 868. And then separately on SB 868 to change it to support instead of support if amended,
Okay,
just to make it clear.
okay.
Could you
So,
explain your reasoning, just so we,
On
why to go to full support rather than what staff wants to do, which is support if amended?
the amending says they wouldn't support it unless it requires batteries. And I'm saying on balcony solar, even without batteries, customers are going to be saving money. And if they're being sold without batteries, that gives Ava a very good opportunity to run a very beneficial program to incentivize those batteries for balcony solar that would help customers and potentially give Ava access to lots more batteries for VPP.
Oh, yes, please do.
Sorry, clarification to the member lads. The program would exempt the legislation as written, either without or with or without, as amended or not as amended, would exempt these installations from the interconnection agreement. So they likely would not be eligible for these kind of VPP programs.
Say that again.
Okay, because the bill legalizes these and then exempts them from the interconnection process, they would not likely be eligible for VPP programs writ large.
So the Ava couldn't sell the batteries at that point, in connection with.
Sorry, it's not to say that we couldn't do anything with batteries to support them, but it's unlikely that the small installations themselves would be eligible for some sort of virtual power plant program unless there were an interconnection into the grid. The whole idea with these is that they are not grid connected, as SB 868 envisions them. Just want a clarification on that.
Whoa, they're not grid connected?
No.
Meaning that if you plug it in, you've got to make sure that that circuit breaker is turned off?
They would use inverter technology to ensure that there's no backfeeding into the system. But it would not, point being is it would not connect to the broader system. It would only provide power to your house. Yes, or apartment, correct.
So it
There's-
would be,
there's
So
no
that
inter-
means you got to add a second piece of equipment at the breaker.
Or export, sorry, or export limitation. So, yes, there's more electrical infrastructure that's needed there. You can't backfeed. There's no interconnection agreement. So that presents a safety hazard unless you have more capability to not export, like during an outage, and you can't be backfeeding the grid during an outage. So they're set up to not export.
And I should note that's why we have our proposed amendment for the support if amended position applies to both batteries as well as more clarity around the around the inverter backfeeding prevention, which currently remains somewhat unclear in the language.
Oh,
It also means if there's no load at the house, the customer's not saving money because there's no net metering. There's no spinning of the meter backwards. It can only
Right.
be offsetting load that is occurring at that time, at that instant. So the battery requirement that we're advocating for is actually a way to make sure that the solar that's generated actually has a use. Because in a scenario where you don't have use during the day, where a lot of people who are employed aren't at home during the day, then that can't go anywhere. So a battery is actually a mechanism to ensure that that clean energy is actually used by the household and into the bill savings that that we're focused on.
So this actually is a lot more complicated technology than is being used in Europe. I understand.
I'd say there are differences between how household electrical systems are set up in Europe. I'm no expert by any means.
Right.
But there is essentially with this underwriter laboratory certification thing, that it would be a kit specifically designed to ensure the safety requirements, like JP just mentioned, like the backfeeding and things like that.
So it's, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
just,
then I'll withdraw the recommendation to change that until I read more. But I would like to support your efforts and say that the CAC supports your recommendations.
okay, so at this point in time, we will not make an amendment to,
Let them have
okay,
it.
and is there? He's gonna withdraw the second, the amendment to the.
No, I'm gonna say let's support staff position on all
That's
8.
Okay, so
So
do we have a second?
whoever seconded it has to be agreeable to that.
All right,
That's right. So you have to be agreeable. The second has to be agreeable to support as staff recommended. That goes to Cynthia.
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Cynthia seconds. Can we please go to vote?
Thank you. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Lockman,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Chair Susan.
Yes.
Motion is approved unanimously.
Very good, thank you. At this point, there's another, moving on to our next item, which is C7, the Health E Communities Pilot Update. And I'd like to request from Dan, this presentation.
Thank you so much, Chair and committee members. My name is Dan Bertoldi, Electrification Program Manager here at Ava Community Energy. Happy to be talking with you this evening about our Healthy Communities pilot. Next slide, please. So Healthy Communities was a low-income direct install stove electrification pilot. So our focus was on linking electrification to potential health impacts from the intervention. This was a direct install program, so Ava covered the cost for the installation and the equipment for every project. We had our CARE and FARA customers eligible for this program, as well as our customers living in affordable housing. This was a unique pilot in that we monitored the indoor air quality before and after each project so that we could understand those air quality impacts. And we wanted to learn a lot about direct program implementation. So lots of data collection to inform on performance and kind of determine if this was a scalable model that we would want to pursue in the future. The program ran for approximately 1 year. So applications were open from October 2024 through September 2025. The whole pilot cost about $1.25 million. 1.15 of that was for the implementation costs, and then about 100,000 for the air quality analysis that was provided by a grant from the Energy Foundation. This pilot required pretty significant staff time and resources. And so we worked with a number of different partners. I just want to mention Franklin Energy Services, our implementation team, and then Berkeley Air Monitoring Group, who did the air quality analysis. Next slide, please. So just to kind of start off here with the summary of our pilot, and I'll go into some more detail. We completed 162 installations across our service area. And we learned a lot. Some of the highlights I just want to mention, we saw really promising results in the reduction of nitrogen dioxide, which is known to impact human health, specifically, impact people with asthma or COPD. We learned a lot about project timelines and, specifically around permitting and kind of what it takes to complete every one of these projects that, was logistically very complex. We learned a lot about the electrical and panel infrastructure of this customer segment. And we kind of learned a lot about how that impacts the attrition for the program. And then cost. It was about $5,000 for every install for that direct kind of project cost, or the customer benefit was about $5,000, and then $7,000 per project with all of the administrative fees attached. And one thing I want to note is that, this was a really high value offering, but it did not really generate a lot of interest in it. And we had very high attrition. So I'll go into a little bit more detail into that in a later slide. In the end, we did determine that we were not going to move forward with a scaled up program, but we are going to take all of the learnings that we've come across along the way and apply those to future program efforts. Next slide, please. We'll talk a little bit about our marketing efforts. So we used Ava's customer data to identify CARE and FARA customers to reach out directly to. We did want to be a little bit more targeted, so we used the state's Callan Virus Screen 4.0 to identify customers living in areas with high asthma rates. So you can see in these maps, the darker green areas represent where a higher concentration of people live, where the asthma-related emergency visits are high. So we started with targeting people in those census tracts that are in the 75th percentile and above. And then as the program went on, the pilot went on, we expanded that to the 50th percentile and above. So in all, we reached out to about 56,000 unique customers, about half of our CARE customers in total. Next slide, please. So here you can see the customer journey from start to finish. So after a customer was approved by AVA staff, Franklin Energy would go and assess the home to determine the project eligibility. If the customer was going to move forward with the project, they would then go ahead and install the air quality monitor. We would monitor the air quality for about a week or more, and then the electrical contractor would come and install the new unit, and they would take away the old gas unit. And all of the units that we offered were induction. I just want to make that clear. They were all electric induction stoves. And we had to replace an existing gas unit. So after the installation was complete, we would come back at least a week or more to retrieve the air quality monitor and to perform an exit survey. In all, it would take about 30 days to get to that sort of initial site visit. About 75 days to install the new unit, and a lot of that had to do with permitting timelines, and then about 90 days for project completion. So it was a fairly long timeline on average for every project that we completed. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about permitting here. So as I mentioned, permitting had a pretty big impact on the overall timeline for each project. We collected a lot of data on how long it took each one of our jurisdictions to issue a permit. And you could see that there's a high variability between those jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions, you could get a permit effectively over the counter or within the same day. Others, it could take on average up to a month or more. And so, there's a lot of reasons for this, permit center backlogs or staffing shortages, also requirements that some jurisdictions impose on in order to issue these types of permits, things like seismic retrofits or ventilation requirements. So those things, kind of made it so that the timelines were a little bit longer to get those permits, a lot more back and forth with the contractors, and more reasons for delay. And I just want to say that this was a big learning for us, and it is something that we can take for future program implementation, because this is going to be applicable to any electrification program as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here you can see a breakdown of applicant attrition. So kind of to start, we sent out about 200,000 emails to those 56,000 customers. We received only about 518 applications. Of those applications that we received, about 70% were either ineligible or had dropped out. And so you can see kind of as you go along, out of the 451 that we deemed eligible, only about 324 received a site visit, whereas 127 were kind of immediately rejected because they were ineligible. Of the people who did receive a site visit, only about half ended up actually receiving the install. We did see quite a few participants drop out. Either they were no longer interested or they were non-responsive. But I want to point out a couple of things. unsafe panel or electrical and the insufficient panel capacity, those two things combined accounted for a pretty substantial amount, about a quarter of the site visits that we performed. We had to walk away from because of the existing electrical infrastructure. And so this was a really interesting finding for us, and it's something that we definitely need to take into account for future program design. Next slide, please. Yeah, for the air quality results, as I mentioned before, we saw really consistent and significant reductions in nitrogen dioxide. The median concentration went down by about 70%. So you could say that the typical customer did see a considerable reduction in nitrogen dioxide. And another way to kind of look at this data, and something a little bit more relatable, is that is the amount of time that the pollution concentration was above a threshold, above or below a threshold that is set by the EPA. So for nitrogen dioxide, that median threshold was 13 minutes per day above what the EPA would deem as safe for sensitive populations. And that was before the intervention. After the intervention, that effectively dropped to zero. So, we were really happy to see that. Very, very good results there. Carbon monoxide is another pollutant where we saw reductions. Overall, the baseline carbon monoxide measurements were fairly low, but we did see those get reduced from the before to after. It went from 1 minute per day above that EPA threshold to 0 minutes per day. Carbon monoxide is a very poisonous gas, so this was a very good finding. Next step, please, or next slide, please. On to next steps. So, we're going to be taking what we learned from this pilot and applying it to future planning and design. I think we're walking away with achieving what we wanted to achieve out of this pilot, which is a better understanding about how to better implement direct install programs, a better understanding of maybe what our customers want. We learned a lot about the electrical constraints of this customer segment and the building stock. I think we know a lot more about kind of what it takes to run an effective program. Things like permitting and timelines and understanding costs are really important, and really builds the knowledge for AVA's local development team. I just want to mention that the remaining budget that we had set aside, if we did determine that we were going to move forward to a scaled up program, we have about $8.5 million that we're going to be reinvesting into other building electrification programs in the future. I'll also note that Berkeley Air Monitoring Group, who did our air quality analysis, they're going to be continuing on this research and advancing sort of this field of study. They're working under a CEC grant, and they're working in coordination with the Equitable Building Decarb program, which is a statewide program, to better understand, human health and exposure to these pollutants, specifically from gas stoves. Next slide, please. All right, and with that, I just want to say that this was a really great learning experience. It's also a really great coordinated effort between different departments at AVA, and it was a really fun pilot to implement as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions in the room? Yes. Okay. We'll go with Jim.
It sounded like you had lots of good lessons. Do you have any sense of how they will be applied in the future? What are you going to change in programs that you may be considering or maybe considering? So that's the first one. I've got a couple more.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. We have some hands. I'm going to go with. Oh, you're not done? Go for it.
Two more. I'm
Two more,
waiting
two
for
more.
an answer from
Okay,
Dan
okay.
or
Well,
JP.
maybe we can take all the questions because we may get some questions that have some similarities and we can
Okay.
group them as opposed to answering to every single one individually.
Is there a report about this, a detailed report, one beyond just this presentation? Is Franklin Energy or Ava or some combination writing up a report? And I would hope that that would be publicly available so other CCAs or organizations trying to do this would not have to
Sounds like a good idea.
stub so many toes, the equitable building decarbonization program or equitable building electrification program that's the CC is doing statewide. I'm sure a report on this would be useful for them. And a third question is on the outreach, did you work with any community organizations, trusted community organizations to try to increase your response rate? So those are my three questions.
Very good. Good questions. At this time, I'd like to go with Davis. Davis.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize he wasn't gonna give an answer. But, I mean, I had a similar line of questioning, I think, around the outreach, seeing the marketing, customer recruitment, was a really low response rate. So definitely curious on like what that engagement looked like. But also just wanted to commend you guys for a really cool study. I think it was brilliant to track permitting timelines across jurisdictions. You had a like really unique role as a JPA of those cities and counties to be able to do that. So thanks for doing that. But yeah, I'll stop there. I think I just mainly had questions about
Thank
the
you, Davis.
engagement process.
We'll go with Vijay.
Yeah. Hi, Dan. The question I have is, there was no call out on induction stove. I'm assuming these are heating elements stove that we installed, and with the number of installs compared to what was planned, was there an opportunity for providing a induction stove for the approved customers?
So your question is it was just the induction stove? Were you just asking about that?
No, I thought they installed only the heating element stoves, not the induction. Is that a fair assumption?
Just to clarify, it was an only induction. We did not install. We did not install electric resistance. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that answers my question.
Very good. And I think we had a question in the room. If there's no further questions by CAC, Jessica, Cynthia.
Yeah.
You need the microphone.
Yeah. This is more of a comment. This appears to be an incredibly successful program, and it did create a lot of benefit in the low-income communities, and I would support additional programs that do provide these benefits to the community. I mean, it made an incredible difference in the air quality. And so I guess my question is, why can't we consider continuing? I know there was a low response rate, that doesn't necessarily surprise me. But those who benefited from it really got great benefits. So I wonder if the marketing could be different. And of course, I think in the low-income community, you know, the rental units, you know, may need some work on them. So I would like to see more programs that have this kind of benefit to the community. And so those are my comments. And I guess the issue about this was that there was a staffing issue, maybe, you know, but maybe we could work with other community partners to assist, but this is a great program.
I agree. Peter.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is a question, but is it okay if I just say something?
Sure.
I really appreciate the report. It seems to have been carefully done,
Yeah.
looking at both the benefits and the costs. And it seems to me the conclusion is not that you're going to spend less on low-income communities, but that this may not be the best bang for the buck for those communities. And I would say lesson learned. And that's great, because we've been told a lot that NO2 and other pollutants in the indoor air were a significant issue. You did make some progress on NO2, but at a large cost. And if we can instead use this kind of money to lower energy costs, that might be more welcome in that community. So I appreciate the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. At this time, we'd like to open public comment.
Hi, everyone. Jessica Tovar from Local Clean Energy Alliance. I want to just remind everybody how this program came to be. Back in 2022, I think it was, or 2023, there was a potential misappropriation of about $15 million that we were able to advocate actually get used for programs that are needed in the community. And that's how this program came to be. If you didn't know, the Local Clean Energy Alliance was invited to help co-found Building Energy Equity and Power, which is a statewide group of advocates and organizations that are working towards equitable electrification. And so we've been doing that work ever since together. And we have a beautiful website, so I invite you to look up Beep Coalition. But I am curious if there wasn't any partnership with community-based organizations, because that is what you need to make these programs successful. I'm curious if there was a coordination with any other agencies. I know at the time of the advocacy, it was brought up, the Bambi program, which I hate acronyms, but it has a cute name, and so I remember it. I just couldn't tell you what all the Bambi stands for, all the letters. But I remember that was also brought up in some of the advocacy earlier on. And I am aware that Hayward, City of Hayward has been doing some outreach around, I think it's a heat pump giveaway or a program that's maybe sponsored from some old money. I don't know if it was from, I know there was a lawsuit pot of money because their gas-fired power plants exploded, and so there was some money given to the community then. But I do think we need to pair these programs with existing programs. So that's something that, you know, if it wasn't done, probably should have been. And then I also want to highlight that the Air District will potentially be banning gas water heaters, and so there will be a need for low-income people to have access to like heat pump water heaters, for example. And I know there's a lot of energy behind that. We have a lot of ideas and could definitely weigh in on this. I appreciate that this work was done I think lesson learned are not failures. That's what helps us like do it better the next time. And I would like to see if this is published somewhere, if we can get a copy beyond what was provided today, I think that would be very helpful to us and to building energy equity and power. Thank you. Clean power to the people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Catherine Bierce, recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, I want to agree with the previous speaker as well and just say I'm curious to know what communications were engaged with in this process, and if there were none, then that might be a lesson learned to add to the list of making sure that community first outreach with local CBOs is front and center, not just sending out emails. As a marketer myself, I know cold emails have pretty low response rates in general, so having trusted intermediaries that low-income folks know and appreciate might have made a difference here and maybe something to consider for the future work. Question is, did Ava consider battery-enabled stoves or did not need new wiring for these areas? That's something that the New York Housing Authority, I believe, has bought 10,000 battery-enabled stoves for pre-World War II buildings that were rewiring the building, it would be cost prohibitive to make it happen. So there are 3 makers on the market here. I don't work with any of them at the moment. I just know of Impulse Labs is a cooktop only. There's Electra in New York, and then there's Copper Home, or usually called Change Me Copper, now it's Copper Home in Berkeley, that make these battery-enabled appliances. Could be a lesson learned to think about the 120-volt options for the future. So that's something to think about. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I did want to have a comment, especially since I do combustion safety testing. This happens to be my day with a little bit of advice. I have tested gas stoves. They are horrible. They are really, really bad when you use the oven. First 5 minutes, I test 600 inside the stove, 600 parts per million of carbon monoxide.
Wow.
Consistently. It does as it heats up, it does dry up on the carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a very dangerous substance. They don't recommend any more than 2 parts per million with young children and pregnant women. So it's a very big deal when you can reduce it to 0. I really hate those stoves. I hate testing them and I hate seeing them. The stovetops are not as bad. But yeah, I think these stove makers get away with murder when you talk about how much they can produce as far as that particular compound elements. That said, as far as I also look at a lot of panels, and the average panel here in the Bay Area is about 100 amps, and that would probably be I think most of those stoves need a 30 amp breaker, which takes almost a quarter of their electricity just for cooking. And so there's collars that are available that help manage your smart panels, that help manage the electrical panel. So those are some options. And I do really want to emphasize reaching out to the community organizations to propel the message. So that's all I have to say. And thank you very much, Dan. I love the data, and I would love to see even more data, because I have my own, but I don't have those kind of results. I don't have that reach into people's homes. But thank you very much.
And Chair, may I speak to the
Sure.
item?
Go
Or thank
ahead.
you. I just want to speak to my experience, and thank you very much, Dan, for the program. Through 2024, I was basically not working, just running a campaign for city council. So that means I really didn't make any money. So I qualified for the FARA program, which was a good opportunity to really experience this program. So thank you, Dan. I was able to take advantage of this program. So if you want to have more qualitative data, I think it's important to have those comments in your finding and how I think it overall improves it. The challenge, of course, is if somebody's used to gas cooking, it's very different to electrify. But I think the value is there because of the knowing indoor air monitors, how they really show the VOCs and the toxicity, and just even looking at wine glasses at home, you don't have to clean them as much anymore because there isn't that gas that sticks to the wine glasses, something you could see. Having looked at other programs as well, being able to know more about what Rising Sun does. They do energy audits, so they can come look at what they need to do. I think those partnerships with Rising Sun, even Bayren, they had another program that helped insulate your home for $1,000. So I think there's a lot of synergies. You're probably well aware of it, Dan. Just looking how the outreach from just the email to going to events, I think I see in the upcoming agenda item for the board of directors, it'll be a sponsorship at the Cherry Festival, and you're spending about $5,000 there to table, and it's to provide information, and you had other programs. So how do you sort of sync up with all your programs and offerings and then partner effectively to get your messaging out there so it doesn't become such a heavy lift for you, Dan, and the team? I think it's very important that this program continues in some capacity or look at other value-added benefits to our consumers. I think it was very valuable, and I think sometimes life-changing. I know my daughter sometimes suffers from asthma, and I was looking at the map, and I could see where in San Leandro, there's places where it could be in the 60th percentile, which is an 80th, and it gets worse. So I think there's more that we can be doing, but I think a lot of what the Berkeley Air Center is doing with the air monitors are critical to evaluate, and how we sort of create the opportunity when you have a thermostat, but also measures their air quality. And a lot of those smart sensors are more tied into that. And if somehow we can incorporate any kind of upgrades in people's homes with these nonprofits or these organizations, that we help have a connection to the data points people are providing about their healthy home or not so healthy home, and those nonprofits, and partnering with other organizations to really have that bang for the buck and maybe reinvest further in. I look forward to supporting the heat pump matter too, because I think that for water heaters or HVACs, but fortunately for me, I was getting solar storage, so my whole electrical panel was updated, so I didn't have to worry about that. They came in. Franklin was great. A lot of great resources there. The person I had was always available. You had the installers, nice people. I think my only concern my wife had raised, like, it only has 4 burners versus 5. And so, like, making it work and being flexible, having the option to upgrade, something like that. But I think it's a great program. I just want to compliment the AVA team for your efforts and trying that out. And hopefully we can do more programs that, meet or exceed expectations. I just want to share those comments. Thank you, Dan.
Excellent comments. Thank you, everybody. All right. Well, that said, looks like we've come to the end of the list, other than we have an ad hoc. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. There were some questions. You had some questions. Right. Where's the money going? It's that 8 million. Did you have any answers for us there, Dan?
I can kind of just maybe start at the top of the list. I was taking notes as questions were coming in, so I'll try to address those as best I can. So I think the first question was, what are we looking to change in future programs based off of our learnings? I think one of the things is understanding permitting timelines and kind of working those into our scheduling, and to help us better understand how long projects are going to take. I think, that was a big takeaway. I think another big takeaway was understanding how the impacts from the kind of existing electrical infrastructure are going to increase the attrition from a program. I think things like implementing virtual inspections kind of at the start, so that we don't have someone go to the site if we can avoid that, just by taking a look at the panel. If there's a way for them to understand this is just not going to work, we could, if we did that virtually, it would save a lot of time. It would help with the logistical complexity. So I think that was a major takeaway. Also, just eliminating, projects that wouldn't be eligible because the existing equipment wasn't eligible. We had to walk away from a number of homes that already had electric stoves. And so I think virtual inspections is a really good idea for this type of programs. And I think just, in general, tailoring an offering that is maybe more attractive to our customers, and keeps their interest a little bit more. And, specifically, I think, we want to be looking forward to programs that have a higher decarbonization value. That is one of our sort of like foundational objectives as an agency. We do know that, induction is not the best decarbonization measure, but it could be mixed in with other decarbonization measures. So we could look, to the future to integrate all of that. We do not have a detailed report outside of the slides that are shared. Definitely something we could consider in the future. But definitely if there's, any organizations that want to learn from AVA, we would be welcome to meet with them and share as much data as we can. I have a lot more data that can be used for, very in the weeds details about this work. Regarding the question on engagement and CBOs, we did present our programs to a number of different CBOs. We didn't partner directly with any. We did also work, we did talk to our city staff, city and county staff about this program. We actually had one of our member agencies, the city of Fremont, directly reach out to affordable housing community members that they had direct ties to, and we got really good response rates from them. So definitely something in the future, working closely with our cities as well, to get more engagement is something we could look to. I think because of the niche sort of nature of this program, it was very specific. It was geared towards a very specific customer. Mass outreach was not something that we wanted to do because we didn't want to kind of overfill the funnel, so to speak, and not be able to keep up with the amount of applications coming in. I did want to just mention that we did consider battery assisted units. I think, the objective of this pilot was really to understand more about a traditional install and going out and doing, installing 240 volt circuits and what it takes to do that, because that's more applicable to learnings for kind of electrification programs broadly. But we did look at those battery assisted units. We do think that they're a really good solution to avoiding a lot of those electrical upgrades that would otherwise be required. But, number one, they're very expensive still. And number two, they're not widely available. I think the wait times on those are a lot longer than your, kind of more standard induction 240 volt units that were immediately available.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Let me just jump in there too.
Sure.
I think one other rationale for not choosing to use those stoves, as Dan said, it didn't actually, because of the cost of the stoves, it didn't actually reduce our cost for the customer, because the cost of the unit was just as high as doing all the electrical work. And these are also brand new companies. They are brand new companies doing brand new technology. And this is whereas induction is a robust technology, it's widely used throughout Europe and Asia. And, so introducing and leaving a low income customer with a $5,000 piece of kit that is from a brand new company that's just entering the market felt like not terribly responsible on our part, because what happens if that fails in a year or two and the company is not there to service and warranty it? So we made the decision to go with more robust and mature product suppliers, because we don't want to leave a customer. Then it becomes our obligation, to keep, or somewhat our obligation to keep that up, because this is a customer set that we don't want to burden with that kind of expense in the future. So we made that decision for that purpose. So anyway, Dan, just wanted to add that. Thanks. Go for it.
Thanks, JP. I think I addressed all of the questions, and happy to take any further clarifying questions.
Yeah, just with that, if that's done, there's a couple other points just on the email outreach. I did want to note that we had an 11% open rate, I believe, Dan. It's in one of the slides further on in the appendix. And so the email open rate is actually really high. And there is also people don't necessarily want to get rid of their gas stove, right? People have a lot of agency in this decision. I totally agree that there's some trust hurdles that we may need to move through, and we always want to improve our outreach opportunities. It's why we work so closely with our cities as well. But we were actually quite surprised by the email open rate, which is much higher than in a lot of our other programs. We're as we have done other electrification programs like the heat pump water heater incentive that we worked with Stop Waste to deploy, we're building more learnings around electrification, the challenges to electrification, the timelines associated with electrification. And these are all really helpful as we work with our cities. We did use a variety of interventions to manage for impacted service panels, collars, splitters, all sorts of technology. That was part of the learnings as well. We're spending $1,000 on a splitter. They're not cheap, but they do help you avoid a service panel upgrade, or they do help you avoid a much larger expense. And so we did use those technologies. We just didn't use the battery-enabled induction. So just a couple other points on Dan's great responses so far.
Okay, thank you. Peter, go ahead.
Two things. One, what's an email open rate? And then I have a second question.
Of all the people you sent an email to, how many of them opened the email?
Oh, opened it. Oh, you can tell.
Yes.
Okay. Second question or thought, comment is the California Energy Commission has really been a leader in moving toward electric stoves and getting rid of gas. It seems to me that it would be very useful for their thought process for them to have a copy of whatever report you have on this. So have you thought of sending it to them? And if not, would you?
Yeah, I had a beer with Andrew McAllister 2 weeks ago and told him that we were going to be presenting this, and also with President Hochschild and other members of the board. I think we're meeting with Commissioner Skinner upcoming on some of our EV charging work. So we're constantly in communication with, with regulators and stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes, that I second that motion on spreading the word. This was a very, very good the data collected from it is excellent and very, very important as far as health and our current state of our infrastructure in our homes and how to mitigate that. Personally, I've seen a lot of people go to 110 induction stoves, and they love them. There's 2 burners. They put them right on top of the gas burners, and they use that. And the only thing about induction is that you have to have the correct pot. You have to have a special pot. You can't just use like an aluminum or just all steel. You have to have a pot that is actually, you can use a magnet to tell whether or not you can use that pot on your induction stove. But that said, yes, please propagate that data. It's very, very good. I love it. I need to see some more. I'm hungry to see some more. So thank you very, very much for that.
And share last thing, they did provide a free cookware, which was a bonus. So that I think that closed the deal with my wife.
If desired, it was
Yes,
not
it was well
required.
desired, yes.
Because
Now
Not mandatory.
You're
many
really
people love their
making me
pots.
upset that I missed it, but I actually didn't. I already have an induction stove.
Cast iron works too.
Yes, we have.
And I love it. Yeah, I wouldn't go back. So that said, thank you, Dan, and thank you, JP, for all your comments and work. Again, Franklin gets a gold star. Good organization. Worked with them before. And let's any other comments? It looks like we're going to close that item and move on to our ad hoc update. Jim, did you have anything? You didn't have anything. All right. So I do have something that we were thinking of moving to a CCA 3 ad hoc. At this moment, we're backing off of that and just keeping the affordability ad hoc that will be combined, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, with the LDBP, which is the long-term business plan ad hoc. And we're currently a little shy of members, but we'll do our best. And that's about it for the ad hoc committee update. Are there any questions? Nope. Okay, anybody want to join an ad hoc? That's okay. All right. Cynthia, noted. Okay. All right. We don't have any member and staff announcements, but we do have a very, very, very important thank you to everybody who is going to remain and who are moving on from the Community Advisory Committee. It's personally my honor to have met you. I didn't know what I was getting into when I first joined as an alternate. And I have learned so much about community. I've met so many great people. And I can tell you that this is an amazing opportunity for me, and it's an amazing opportunity for anybody who wants to join AVA's Community Advisory Committee, but also my heartfelt thank you to all of the great people who have contributed. It brings a tear to my eye. So that said, I hope we all stay in touch. We all can still contribute in any way, shape, or form to AVA and its health and its growth and its purpose and its JPA. Would anybody like to add to that?
I'll just add a few comments. Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate somebody like Cynthia Landry, who we've connected over time. So, her advocacy and support through the years, from a board member to a CEC member, just being able to be part of this agency and helping out and shape its future in whatever which small way I could. I've learned a lot, of course, about RECs and RAs and everything else there is, from ABC to Durham, this and that. I think it's amazing the work that Ava is doing, and you know, I can't really never stop saying clean power to the people. Jessica always emphasizing the community's needs and keeping us focused on what's important: affordability for the people, clean energy, and finding a way to be more resilient now than ever with all the challenges that we see in our community. It's been an honor and pleasure to serve this board. If I can be a resource, I'm happy to help where I can. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ed. Kate.
I would just like to speak on behalf of myself and the entire AVA staff team. Thank you to all of our CEC members, both those who are continuing to serve on this committee in a new fresh term, and also those who their time on this committee will come to an end, at least for now. We really appreciate all of your dedication to the communities that you represent on this committee, and your dedication to this agency and helping it grow and develop over time. So thank you so much. Your contributions are very much felt and appreciated. There's plenty of food and dessert, so please continue to partake. And if you are leaving the committee, please feel free to take home your little nameplate there as a nice little keepsake to honor the whole thing. A nice little keepsake to honor your time on this committee. So thank you again so much. And I hope to stay in touch.
One more. I'd just like to say I'm sorry so many of the staff have left, but I'd like to express my appreciation for the incredible professionalism of the staff, the judgment and the knowledge that the staff has brought to this, and to my fellow board members for the intensity and dedication that you have all brought to this. I do have one recommendation, and that is that there should be an onboarding process for new members. Maybe there is, and I just didn't happen to benefit from it, but I think there needs to be something where people understand how Ava works, what makes it tick, how it works financially, what the various buckets are, what kind of programs there are. Over a couple of years, you can get that knowledge as we go through these processes. But I think everyone brings a different set of experiences and knowledge to this committee when they join, but there isn't a commonality of that experience from some kind of onboarding process that I think would really be useful.
Thank you. Thank you. I was hoping you guys would say that we are going to create an onboarding process. It's in the works. If you'd like to help, that would be great, Peter. But I know you're flying off to distant lands, but you can do it from remotely.
Okay.
That said, Cynthia.
Yes, I would like to say a few words also. I I have been on the steering committee and on this committee, I guess since about 2016. I don't know if it's 2016. I have learned an incredible amount. It's still not sufficient, but I've learned an incredible amount, and I've also been able, and this is a sidebar, this has to do with the committee. I've also been able finally to learn how to speak in a mic, which is a big thing for me. I am certainly a lot more articulate in terms of speaking. I did have a speech impediment, not now. It's really been a great, I work as a public social worker, so I work with a low-income community, specifically with homeless population and CalWorks, domestic violence, and anything that comes into our downtown office. But I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to personally grow. I want to thank Jessica, who's been incredible we've talked a lot, and, she's helped me a lot learning various things, and advocacy, which is very important, and advocacy for our disadvantaged community, and to give folks an opportunity, which is very important. I also want to thank Adrian. Adrian is incredible, and I will miss Adrian a lot. I also want to thank Ed. Ed, you're a great chair. If there's ever a public office you get into and you need an assistant, I would be most happy to be part of your team. You really have the chair skills. And I also want to thank Mickey. Mickey's a kind soul also, always making sure I get a ride home. I really want to thank everybody. Jim, your name escapes me right here. Peter. I really want to thank everybody for the opportunity to serve here, and I will be coming to the commission meetings as a guest, and I hope to serve on another public community also, public advisory, another commission, I should say. So, and if I could be of service, I'm certainly willing to volunteer to assist. So, thank you very much for this opportunity to serve the community.
Thank you, Cynthia. I will especially miss you at the meetings, but I think you'll still be around.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen the end of Cynthia Landry. All right, I'm gonna take the opportunity to request any items for future meetings. to be placed on the agenda for next meeting. And seeing none, anybody online, anybody in the room? Okay, well then I think we'll end this meeting. It is now 8:37 and we are closing the Community Advisory Committee meeting.
How about a group photo? For sure. Are you